Hey everyone, and welcome back. So today we're going to be reviewing Assault Suits Valken Declassified on the Nintendo Switch by looking at the top 3 reasons you're going to want to play this version of the game. Now to start things off, this is the port of an underrated SNES classic, and it currently sells on the Nintendo Switch eShop for $24.99. It was released on March 30th of 2023, it's published by Rainmaker Productions, and has a download size of 1.41 gigabytes. Now today's review will have a slightly different format, especially this being the port of an SNES game. I rather want to focus on why you should be playing the Switch version. However, at the same time, for anyone who's totally unfamiliar with the game, we'll still be going over all the major positives and negatives of the game, and I'll still be giving it a score at the end. So now, let's jump into the top 3 reasons you should be playing this game on the Nintendo Switch. Just remember, if you are liking the video, hit that like button. Now, first and foremost, the first reason you're going to want to play this game on the Nintendo Switch is that you'll be playing basically the best version of an underrated SNES classic. Now, the original game was actually not released under this name outside of Japan. It was heavily censored and edited and released as Cybernator. And in this new Nintendo Switch edition, we're finally getting the original storyline, officially translated from the original Japanese. Now, we're not going to go too deep into the storyline, but these are the basics. You are playing as a pilot of a mecha suit, and you are part of a faction that is currently at war fighting over the leftover resources of planet Earth. Now, what's highly interesting in this version of the game as well is that we're getting the full cutscenes introducing pretty much each and every level. And although not overly deep as a storyline, for an SNES arcade action shooter, we're actually getting a lot of storyline here. And it really helps set up each and every level and each and every mission. So now if we shift over to the gameplay, you're once again also getting the best version of the game. The graphics for one have never looked so good, being completely remastered and restored to their original designs. Obviously, for someone who wants them, there are also retro color screen filters available, but those are totally optional. Personally, I liked the basic clean version. The gameplay and controls have also never been as good as in this version of the game. I know it's really weird that I'm saying this because normally I try to play classic games with a D-pad, but this particular one really benefits with the addition of joysticks, something that just wasn't a reality back on the SNES. You also have the ability to lock your firing direction at any time by holding down the L button, and trust me, for those side-scrolling shooting levels, you'll want to take full advantage of this. Now, I will give a warning on the controls, however. They might feel slightly sluggish to some. However, it's important to note that this was very voluntary. That's to give you the sense of the weight behind piloting a huge mecha suit. And after a few minutes, once you get used to that sort of delay when you want to switch directions or whatnot, it actually starts making a ton of sense. And to be totally honest, the main reason why this game was probably underrated on the SNES is that it was basically ahead of its time. Number one, its anime mecha style really wasn't as popular in the 90s as it is today, and I really think it lacked that mass appeal outside of Japan. Also, it combined various gameplay styles, which wasn't as common back in the 90s as it is today. Some levels you'll be going through in an action platformer style, others will play out more like side-scrolling shooters, and yet again, you also have even arena-style shooter levels. But not only that, there's even levels that will shift the gameplay style mid-level. For example, level 2 is a perfect example of that. You'll start out as a side-scrolling shooter, then you'll end up doing an arena-style part of the level, and finally, you'll end as an action platformer. And I think that all those gameplay styles were a lot to take in, especially when at that time, gaming was primarily catering to a younger public. But now, re-released for a brand new generation of gamers, I really think it's time for this game to shine. Now, the second reason why I think this is the version of the game you're going to want to pick up is because it's never been more approachable than this re-release of the game. Another main issue that I think plagued the original release of this game is the lack of approachability for casual gamers. And in my younger days, I definitely fell into this bucket. I remember renting the original Cybernator and really never getting past the first level. So it was one of those games that I sort of rented once, died a dozen times on the first level, set aside, and never rented again. However, this version of the game does two amazing things to address that approachability. Number one, it actually includes a digital version of the 80-page guidebook that's now been translated into English, which will really help younger players or players with a more casual level of gaming knowledge. And at the same time, for those of you that like to figure things out on your own, just don't look at the guide. Next, and probably the biggest addition to approachability here, is the addition of save states. What made the original release of this game even more gruelingly hard is the fact that you had a limited number of lives and a limited number of continues, after which you had to restart from the beginning. And with the difficulty and arcade style of the gameplay, trust me, that meant you had to put in quite a bit of dedication to be able to get anywhere near finishing this game. However, the addition of save states here is a godsend, letting you sort of approach it on a level-by-level basis. On my end, that's exactly what I did, finally allowing me to finish this game for the first time ever. And it even conserved the original unlockable cheats for those of you that want an extra helping hand. Now, while some of you might consider playing through a game with save states cheating, well, guess what? They even conserved the challenge level for those of you that are seeking it, offering what's called the super playthrough to get the good ending, which you have to play through the whole game without even one death. Now, that's definitely not something I've achieved yet, but one day I hope to get there. And trust me, this is one of those extremely satisfying games when you finally get a level down. I know the fact that I can now almost blast through the first level without even taking a hit is an extremely satisfying experience. And the third and final reason we're going to go over why this is the version you want to get is because of all the extra added content. Now, we already went over quite a few of these items in the two previous sections, like the save and load states, the new retro color screen filters, the unlockable cheats, and the super playthrough, even pointing to the fact that they included the 80-page Japanese guidebook, which, by the way, 40 of those pages are backstory behind the game for those of you that really want to dive in more than what's exposed in the gameplay itself. But that's not all. They even included brand new artwork from the original game's character designer, and also never before seen production artwork. You also have access to the original and arranged soundtracks that are available to play in the game's music player. And lastly, one of the most interesting parts of this release is you actually have an interview with Satoshi Nakai about the original game's mecha design, which is a 14-part video interview in the original Japanese, fully subtitled in English. I mean, sometimes we talk about lazy ports on the Nintendo Switch. Well, this is definitely not one of those. And I think a lot of other developers could take a lesson from this release, because this really is the way to re-release a classic retro game. And now we get to the verdict. And if this is one of the first times you're watching one of my reviews, well, my full review scale is available down below in the description of the video. And in the case of Assault Suits Vulcan Declassified on the Nintendo Switch, I'm going to be giving this one an 8.5, putting it at the high end of a great game. And as I mentioned in this review, it's getting this really amazing high score because primarily it's the best version of this classic SNES game. Number two, they've made the game extremely approachable even for a casual gamer. And lastly, the amazing amount of extra content they've added in has really made this re-release worth picking up. In reality, one of the only real major downsides to this game is I do find it quite pricey at $24.99 compared to some other offerings on the Nintendo Switch eShop. And even though I think it still holds up very well today, the retro style gameplay might feel a little sluggish to some. But overall, I do think this is an amazing release, especially if you're a fan of retro gaming. Now, I want to hear from all of you in the comments down below. What did you think of this alternate review style that I might use from time to time? Also, are you planning on picking up Assault Suits Vulcan on the Nintendo Switch? And don't forget, on the way out, if you did like the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and click on that notification bell so you know when all my future content comes out. And as usual, I hope I'll see you in my next video.